presently we are focusing on chapter 2. We have completed chapter 1, and our focus now is on chapter 2. We have gone through verses 1 through 7 of chapter 2, and tonight we want to start our focus on chapter 2, verse 8 and 9. Chapter 2, verse 8 and 9, Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8 and 9, as we begin our lesson tonight. We probably just pick up the first part of this aspect of it. We want to be looking at verse 8 and 9. It says, "For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that's not of yourself, it is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast." Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8 and 9. Since the dawn of time, man have been seeking redemption from his guilt and from his sin. Since the dawn of time, there have been two ways of seeking that redemption. Man has been seeking it in two ways. They have been trying works and they have been faith. In Genesis chapter 4, the first two humans that were born into this world, Cain and Abel, came before the presence of God, and they offered sacrifice for their sins. Cain offered the works of his hands, and his offering was rejected according to Genesis chapter 4, verse 3 and 5. Abel offered blood of an innocent substitute, and he and his offering were accepted, Genesis chapter 4. Cain approached God on the basis of his works. Abel approached God on the basis of faith. Both of these men approached God because they were drawn to do so by some need in their heart. Every person have a need that humanity basically has been born with a void. When they came into this world, with that void. There is an emptiness in man, that empty place within the heart of man, and everyone is seeking something to fulfill it. People attempt to fulfill this void in their life by various kinds and different activities and different means. Some seek to fulfill it with sex, some seek to fulfill it with drugs, alcohol, other works of the flesh. Some seek to fill the void with religion. Their works and self-imposed goodness makes them feel better about what they're doing and themselves, to basically try to scratch that itch that is deep down inside within their soul. History pretty much is history of humanity is littered with sin and religion. Both of these effort by people who are trying to fulfill the emptiness within their hearts with something they can produce. The problem with living a life of sin is that it always ends in death, hell, and eternal separation from God. That is how life always ends. But trying to produce yourself. The problem with human religion and good work is the very same thing. It ends with death, hell, and eternal separation from God. The drunk, the drug addict, the harlot, the child molester, the rapist, the murderer, the thief, every other kind of sin you want to mention, and sinners that are going to hell. But it's also true about people who are trapped in false religion, in the religion of the world. Regardless of how sincere they may be in their belief system, those who have nothing more than religion are headed to hell as well. Whether they be Muslim, Hindu, Jews, Aminism, humanism, agnostic, atheist, Catholic, Presbyterian, Methodist, Mormon, Jehovah's Witness, Seventh-day Adventist, Baptist, Church of God, of Prophecy, any other religion, non-religion or religious group, however you want to call it, if all they have is their belief in their system, they are lost and they're headed for judgment. That is how it is. And so that is why the passage that I've read to you is so important this evening as we look into our lesson. It's so important. It is clear, and it basically is clear and a very concise lesson that we have before us. The Apostle Paul laid out God's way of salvation. The few verses, these two verses, pretty much I believe is among the most important in the whole Bible. They teach exactly how people can be saved. They teach us pretty much the way and the wonder of salvation. That's what they do. These verses show all people of all generations, in all places, in all religion, what they must know in order that they might be saved from their sins and from the fires of hell. That is pretty much basically what the word teaches and what we need to adhere to and hold to in regards to what we're going to talk about. So as we look at this lesson tonight, I want to take the verses that here, and I want us to try to expand upon and expose here the truth that is written in relationship to these verses. The truth together pretty much in this series. This series is going to be entitled Salvation God's Way. Salvation God's Way. This is how God looked at salvation. And so as we look at verse 8 and verse 9 of Ephesians, we're going to first look at the way of salvation. Now, you need to understand carefully and very clearly and precisely that the verses are a summary of all that Paul has said about salvation up to this point. Now, we have looked at some verses. These verses represent the Lord's ultimate statement regarding the way of salvation. These verses tell us how to be saved, and they tell us what will not save the soul. In these verses, Paul talks about the positive and the negative side of our salvation. And so before we can consider the positive side of salvation, I want to basically deal with the negative side of salvation.